I'm Riley.
And I'm Ronnie,
And this is the Plan to Eat podcast.
where we have conversations about meal planning, food, and wellness to help you answer the question, what's for dinner? Hello, and welcome back to the Plan to Eat podcast. Today, Riley and I are going to dive into a good chunk of your dinner dilemmas because we haven't been answering very many of those at the end of our podcast where we've been breaking down our book club book. So since we're in between books right now, we're going to focus on your dinner dilemmas, but we do have a few things that we wanted to talk about before we get started with that. Because it's spring, we wanted to talk a little bit about spring cleaning.
When Ronnie first texted me this idea, I said, oh no, I'm terrible at spring cleaning. But it's good. I can talk about it and put some things into practice.
Well, the thing that made me think about it is my refrigerator really needs to get cleaned out. There's like the little like onion papers in the drawers. And, you know, at a certain point in time, you just realize it's been a while and I need to like take everything out, clean all the things. So it just got me thinking this would be a great time to talk about it because I think a lot of people get into a mood for cleaning in the spring as kind of like we change seasons. I personally do. So I haven't cleaned out my refrigerator yet, but I thought it would be interesting to talk about maybe some of the spring cleaning projects we're thinking about and how we might try to incorporate them into our schedules.
I mean, in some parts of the U.S., this podcast is going to be coming out really late because it's summer in some places. But
That's
here in
true.
Colorado, we have snow on the forecast in a couple of days at my house. So yes, it's still spring. So we've got time. If you're feeling like, wait, it's summer. Why are you talking about spring cleaning? Doesn't really matter when you do these things. It's always a good time to consider them and maybe put some of these things into practice, even if it's not at the start of a season.
Yeah, I agree. Riley and I did a podcast, was it 2 years ago now, where we cleaned out our cupboards and talked about what that looked like. Was that 3 years ago?
I found a video on my phone recently and it was 2022.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah.
So we cleaned out our cupboards and we kind of like documented our process of cleaning out our cupboards, cleaning out our pantry. So if you're interested in doing a pantry or cupboard clean out, go check out that episode. I'll try to link it in the description of this video so you can find it easily. That's also something I think I need to do because I don't think I've done it since we recorded that podcast.
Same. And I know that things have gotten a little wonky in my pantry and cupboards. And if my husband's listening to this podcast, he will be wholeheartedly agreeing. The thing that I think I need to clean out the most is my freezer. And I was thinking it's a really good time as, you know, we have cooler nights and warmer days. Like you can still get away with eating some like cold weather foods like soups and stews and things at this time of year. And it's a good time to like go through your freezer, get all those things out, put them on your meal plan and consume them. Because if you wait until next fall to eat them, they might get a little funky. So if you froze something, now is the time to use up all those frozen leftovers, frozen recipes, all those things. And then it cleans out your freezer to be ready for whatever homemade ice cream and popsicles you might be making.
That's a really great tip. I actually did realize that I have some frozen tomatoes from last year's garden that I really need to thaw and turn into pasta sauce or something. And so what I did, so while I haven't cleaned out my refrigerator yet, I have reorganized my freezer recently. This is the starting of my process. And one thing that I did was I put the things that I need to use up now, right? Like some of these frozen recipes that are going to be not great if I wait too long, and put them in like their own bin in the freezer. So that way that's my like go-to spot. Like, okay, these are the things that need to get used up. This other stuff can like hang out here for a little while longer. And at least for me personally, that's very helpful.
Yes, putting eyes on it, remembering that it's there, like that is super helpful for me. I'll probably go through and make a list also because then we're not eating something frozen every single night, you know, like we're not having a super stew every night, but I can integrate them into the meal plan and just cross them off the list. And then that way I know we're moving in that direction. I have a lot of frozen peaches from last summer that I realized I never used up. And I had every intention of making like a peach pie or a peach cobbler. and my daughter was really wanting me to use them today. And I told her, I said, hey, I'm gonna actually save those and we're gonna make our first batch of homemade ice cream this summer and I'll use those for that. It's like we're gonna hold out for that, but it's a great way to use them up. So as we get back into the summer, it can be a great way to start the summer. So
That sounds delicious. Invite me over, please.
done. Another thing that I thought of with spring cleaning, in regards to meal planning, is it's a really good time to just freshen up. You know, we both have talked about so often on the podcast how we get into these meal planning ruts and we are cooking the same kinds of things all the time. So as we turn into a new season, it's a great time to go through your recipe book and maybe look for recipes that use seasonal ingredients, things that are coming into season now. Or it's a great time just like all those soups and stews, maybe you move them into a new category in your recipe book that's winter foods or something along those lines, and just start pulling out all those recipes for grilling and fresh vegetables and vegetable salads and all those yummy, springy, summery foods that I know at this point in the winter we're all craving. It's just a great time to consider going through your recipe book and like swapping things up quite a bit.
Yeah. So when Riley and I first started talking about this, she gave me this idea and I thought, well, what a genius thing to do is to go into Plan to Eat and start curating your recipe book a little bit more for the season. So the way that I meal plan in general is I keep basically our family favorite recipes in my queue.
Mm-hmm.
And over the winter, the ones that have accumulated in the queue have been like these yummy lasagna roll-ups or a tortellini soup or
Some like pork green chili,
oh yeah, or like your
salad.
Mississippi pot roast that's so
Yeah.
yummy. So it's like very like rich winter kind of heavy foods. And so what I did last week actually was I went and unqueued some of those recipes and went and looked back at what I was planning last year in the spring and early summer and queued up some different ones. So that way
That's
the things that I'm reaching towards as my go-tos are a little more aligned with the season.
Using the queue in that way is brilliant because you aren't pulling things out and moving them around your recipe book and resaving them into different places, but you're just putting them in a holding area. And especially we're looking at like 4 months at a time here. Like the queue is it's a great way to use it, I think. I probably will start using mine like that.
Yeah, I definitely feel like I could also make a one or two menus that are a little more like spring, early summer specific. And that would save me a lot of time if I just took some of the things that are in my queue right now and made a couple menus with them. That'd probably be a really good idea too.
Well, and if you've been using Plan to Eat for over a year or for around a year, you don't even have to go in and make new menus. All you have to do is, I'm mostly saying this for people who don't use Plan to Eat regularly. All you do is go back in time to last May, last June, and save those menus as they exist already because we don't delete those out. So if you've been planning with us for a year, then just go back in time, save those menus, and then your last yourself is planning for this summer, which is amazing. And it would probably take about 5 minutes to do that. And you could potentially have the entire summer planned.
I think that's a really good idea. I don't tend to use menus as often as I feel like I should, but I'm feeling inspired right now to go and create some menus.
Well, it's helpful because I think they're helpful because you've already thought about it.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, the barrier to entry is actually the planning process. Like we love having recipes and we love having an organized shopping list, but thinking of, okay, what are we going to eat? Like that's the headache part of the whole process. And so
Mm-hmm.
going back in time and just seeing what you made, if you don't want to make a menu out of it, it'll just inspire you to say, oh, we really loved that pizza on the smoker, or we really loved that sheet pan steak and peach salad from last summer. Like those were so delicious. Let's just move them into the queue or let's move them onto the meal plan now. So you don't have to make menus. It would save you time. But I just think for me that's the headache part is like thinking, what am I going to make? Like that part is the hardest. And so if I can get some help with that, that's amazing.
Yeah. I think where I often get caught up is the wanting variety sort of a idea, which is silly because, we have our like 20 recipes that we eat. And like 20
Mm.
recipes is still a lot. There's a lot of variety in 20 recipes, but I have so many recipes in my Plan to Eat account that I often just like scroll through, my main, what do I call like main meal course to find like, oh, a new recipe that maybe I haven't made this one in a long time, or I've never made this one. And I actually tend to like my meal plans more when I use more of the tried and true, which is why I try to make my queue a place that I go to when I'm planning, because as much as I think I want variety, we actually just kind of like the recipes that we like.
Yeah, I mean, I think I often will accumulate new recipes that we love by branching out, but then I forget about them. So I think that
Yeah.
going back in time to look and see, because they aren't in our normal rotation, but we loved them,
Yeah.
but they weren't in our normal rotation. So that going back and looking through past meal plans is really helpful because it reminds me of things like, oh, we really loved that, but it's not in our tried and true, like maybe our category of tried and true, or just in my memory because I lose a lot of things out of my memory sometimes.
Yeah, and I think if you are trying to eat seasonally, this is probably the best way to maintain that, because it can be, obviously you could go and look up like what's in season right now. There are lists all over the place. We have lists on our own blog for what's in season. But if you already made the effort in previous years to try and eat seasonally, well, then you can just you can use your own past knowledge to inform your current self of that.
Totally, yeah. And I enjoy eating seasonally. The heavy, rich, starchy foods of winter start to get really old. And so I always just like start to crave this time of year where berries taste amazing and avocados are really delicious and like produce, like the farmers markets are opening. And so I do find a lot of inspiration from going to farmers markets, even just perusing the grocery store and seeing like what's starting to look really good. Again, it doesn't always help me in the meal planning process because by the time I'm at the store, my meal plan is done. But it does help inform the next meal plan that I make.
Yeah.
Oh, that looks okay. Okay, all those things are in season now. Kiwis are in season, so they're going to taste way better than I tasted a month ago. That kind of thing.
Hmm. My husband is very particular about like the type of food that we're eating pertaining to the weather.
Yes, yeah.
So yeah, he's like, I don't want to eat a soup or a stew if it's 70 degrees outside,
No,
or,
you're
but
wrong.
like but he's also like, I don't also really want to eat like a cold salad if we're having like a chilly spring day. So I'm always paying attention to the weather, particularly in the saddle seasons when it's different from day to day.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that is why I mentioned going through your freezer because you know, that it's with something that's in your freezer, you've already cooked it. And so in theory, it's going to be really easy to get it on the table for dinner if maybe the weather changes in the middle of the day. Cause like we are in Colorado and it is beautiful and sunshiny, a little chilly, but beautiful and sunshiny. But by tonight, it's going to be pouring down rain and it's going to be perfect to have some kind of stew or soup or chili or even like a soup and grilled cheese kind of dinner. Like it's the perfect day for that kind of thing. And if, things shift in the middle of the day, you've got an option by looking in your freezer and knowing what you've got. And you can kind of make adjustments in your meal plan. Because the forecast is the forecast, but things change real fast around here.
So true. And then you can free up some freezer space for your summer recipes. As we talked about last year in the summer, how the freezer is actually a really great summertime tool. So you're not like heating up the kitchen every single night when you're cooking and it's 90 degrees outside. Okay, so one other thing that I wanted to talk about is an idea that's come up with a few of our dinner dilemmas that we've answered in the past few episodes related to essentially finding recipes. So I wanted us to just talk a little bit about how we find recipes or maybe how we choose recipes, and then we'll dive into some actual dinner dilemmas. So tell me a little bit about your finding recipe process, Riley.
That's a really good question. And you're right. We have covered it quite a bit on the dinner dilemmas. I don't do a ton of Googling for I probably wouldn't go Google spring recipes.
Mm.
Probably what I'm going to do is I'm going to stumble upon them on Instagram, and be inspired by something I saw. Maybe I don't make the exact recipe, but maybe I am inspired by an ingredient I see someone else using. And then maybe I'll go search my recipe book and plan to eat because I have a pretty extensive recipe book at this point. A lot of recipes are just living there rent free in my plan to eat recipe book. But I would say I probably I'm more an ingredient person. Like I wouldn't go search spring recipes, but I would say I really want to go make something. like maybe I've got some lemons and I'm like, what's a recipe I can make with lemons? Like maybe a pasta dish with a lemon sauce or some kind of pasta salad with a lemon dressing. Like I'm gonna go about it by ingredients. Like I want to make something with a specific ingredient. Um, or I do have a lot of friends that share recipes with me, and so I get a lot of recipe inspiration from friends. I mean, I have a text thread that's literally titled Food Friend, and people just send recipes in there. It's like 7 people, 8 people. You send me a ton of recipes, Ronnie. And so I would say that's the primary places that I get recipes from. Yeah, I would say that's kind of how I go about recipes. What about
Mhm.
you?
Okay, well, I have a couple comments to make. First, I was thinking this. So I was just out of town over the weekend on a girls' trip, and recipes always seem to come up. I don't think anybody in that group uses Plan to Eat, but we were talking about different recipes and stuff, and I had the thought, like, what do people do if they don't use Plan to Eat? Like when people share these recipes, like I was like, I just don't even. You just end up with like random links and tabs and bookmarks, and I'm like, unfortunately, I don't know if any of the recipes that I shared anybody is going to make, because how are they ever going to find them again?
Totally.
So, like you, I have a pretty extensive recipe book. And maybe this is why we don't do very much Google searching, because I also don't do very much Google searching because we both have like 2,000 recipes in our Plantied account. So, I would say I'm pretty similar to you in that if I do something like clean out my refrigerator or clean out my freezer and I find like, oh, we still have, like venison backstrap from last year, I need to like find maybe a new way to make this that we haven't made it before. So this was actually like what happened in the last week. So then I'll go and specifically search for a recipe for that ingredient. Well, first I'll check my Plan to Eat account and make sure there isn't a recipe in there that I've just completely forgotten about. And then if there isn't something there, I'll go do a Google search and find a recipe that I like. But other than that, similar to you, if I'm scrolling somewhere on the internet, that's often where I find new recipes to add to the never ending collection of recipes. And a lot of times when I find a new recipe, and I know you do a similar thing, when I find a new recipe, I'll like immediately put it on my planner for maybe next week's meal plan. So that way it doesn't get completely forgotten in the abyss of my recipe book.
100%. Or if we make it and love it, I move it into we have a category called recipes we love. And it's kind of my catch-all. Like it's dessert to coffee to breakfast, like it's everything. But it is just because I know that they're amazing.
Mm-hmm.
While you were telling me how you find recipes and like your specific example, another thing I thought of was restaurants. We live in particular most restaurants have a rotating menu seasonally. And so, or a lot of them, a lot of the local restaurants, that's the way that they operate. And so I'll also find recipe inspiration that way. I'll go eat something at a restaurant and I'm like, man, this is amazing. and then I'll try to recreate it at home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have a thought about recipes that I just want to point out, which is that a lot of times the recipes in the title, they'll say like easy something or other, easy chicken lo mein. I don't know. I just made something up,
What pasta dish or something?
Well, not quick. They just say easy. And I just want to point out that I don't think that easy equates to fast, right?
Yes.
Easy and
Right.
quick are not necessarily the same things. I had this experience. I sent you a recipe maybe like 2 weeks ago that was this really yummy chicken. You made this like yummy sauce with it. But there was a lot of chopping and prep work involved in creating the whole recipe. It was like a bowl situation. And the title of the thing says easy. And like after the fact, I'm like, well, yeah, the recipe was easy to make, but I wouldn't say it was a fast recipe. So I just want to caution everybody. If the recipe says easy, maybe dive a little deeper and see if it's actually going to, do you want an easy recipe or do you want a quick recipe or do you want both? Because I'm learning that these are all separate things.
Now that you say that, that is another way that I cull recipes. I'll skim through the ingredients and the directions. And if it's going to take me 2 hours to make it, I often bypass it to find a different one. I'm like,
Yeah.
well, that looks, but I don't have 2 hours. And I have mentioned this on the podcast before, but there's a lot of times where I will prep things during my kids' nap times, or maybe while I'm making breakfast, I'll make a sauce for the dinner recipe I've got planned. But a lot of days I don't have that extra time. And so I don't have 2 hours to make dinner every night. I don't know very many people who do.
Right.
So I'm with you. Like I make risotto quite a bit and we love it. I make it a variety of ways, but and somebody asked me like how fast is it? And I'm like, well, it's like at least 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And she was like, okay, so not 24 hours, like the way they make it in Italy. And I'm like, no, not like that. Not 24-hour risotto people. We're like quick hitters over here, like 30 minutes. And usually it's great.
But also somebody who's never made risotto before might not think it's an easy recipe, even if it's the 30-minute version, right? Like there's still some babying you got to do with risotto. You got to be attentive to your simmering pot and stuff.
Attentive is so much better than the word I was thinking. I was thinking fiddly. I know someone who makes it in an instant pot, and I think that sounds pretty easy. I make mine on the stove, like, and I just add the liquid and continue it for 30 minutes, and it turns out great.
Yeah, it sounds nice.
Never made it in an instant pot, so.
I feel like risotto is a really spring recipe, actually. I feel like I often see risotto with like peas and asparagus, like very like springy, delicate vegetables that you put in risotto.
Yeah, that sounds good. I should add that to my meal plan. Thanks for that.
You're welcome. All right. Do we have anything else to say related to spring cleaning or recipes before we move on to some dinner dilemmas?
My mind just keeps going to my closet where I need to take all of my jackets and put them away. Except I just told everyone that we have snow in the forecast, so I can't. But I just think looking at spring cleaning from a meal planning perspective is just a bit different and unique. And I know it's inspiring me to go and do things a little bit differently this spring.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, if you're looking at your fridge or your freezer or your pantry, and you're doing some of these clean outs, it's also a really great time to save a little bit of money at the grocery store because you're using up these things that are already purchased. You might end up with some like smorgasbord kind of a meals that maybe you're like, I never thought that, macaroni and cheese was going to go with, I don't know what macaroni and cheese doesn't go with.
Shrimp skewers. Like, I feel like that's kind of a weird.
Okay, there you go. I didn't ever think macaroni and cheese and these grilled shrimp skew.
You can't even say it.
I can't even say it. Shrimp skewers. I never thought those would go together, but we're trying it out tonight because we already paid for this food and we're not going to the grocery store until we've eaten it. So if that's kind of where you're at right now as well, I feel like this is a really easy way to save some money at the grocery store.
Yeah, I totally agree. My kids actually love meals like that. I just call them snacky lunch or snacky dinner, and it's a win. They're in. So
I love that.
The name of something, and kids are into it. So
and make it like a fun, peppy name. Oh, it's a snacky lunch.
Yeah, it's like broccoli. If you're like, oh, it's little trees, like they're usually way more into it. Maybe you can get them to do it, get them to eat it.
I think if I told my husband we were having snacky dinner, he would be like, so we're not eating a full dinner. He'd be really concerned.
My family just thinks that we're having like, my cousin calls them adult Lunchables, which is like it's basically a charcuterie board.
Mm-hmm.
Just a little bit different of a name.
I love it. All right, let's transition over to some dinner dilemmas and start answering some questions. Oh my gosh.
No way.
No way. Okay, we legitimately did not look at the document until just now. Suzanne writes in saying she's trying to use what's in the cupboard so she doesn't overspend on groceries. We did not stage this.
No, seriously. I'm actually shocked. Yeah, well, I think we covered your question, Suzanne. Do you have anything to add for cupboard and cooking? We also got the whole podcast. You're going to link in the show notes.
I will definitely link back to our podcast that we did where we cleaned out our cupboards. We talked about how in that episode, Riley and I talked about how we were going to make our next meal plans with the things that were in our cupboards. So Suzanne, I highly recommend that episode if you haven't listened to it yet. In general, I honestly think it's a lot of what we just said, which is that your meals might not be exactly what you picture when you have a normal meal. You might be having pasta with your skewers, or you might be having, I think a lot of the times it comes down to like you have a little bit of something left over, right? So it's like we have a cup of rice left over. And so it's like, well, just make the rice, add it to something else. One thing that I often find in my cupboard is we always have rice, but often don't have quinoa. My husband doesn't like quinoa very much, but I like it. And so it always ends up that we have like a little bit of quinoa left. And so I'll cook some rice, I'll cook that little bit of quinoa, and then I just mix them together. And my husband likes it a little bit more that way when it's not just only quinoa. So I think you can just get kind of creative with the things that are in your cupboard to just use the stuff up. And then, when you go to the grocery store, you think like, well, we don't need any, grains or starches this week because we're making our quinoa rice situation.
Pilaf or risotto are also good ways to use up rice. And not to like harp on rice, but like we just talked about, I've got a half a bag of peas in my pantry and some rice. Like you could probably make maybe some chicken broth. Like you're using up 3 things in your cupboard that way. You make some kind of pilaf or like a bean salad. I'm thinking I have a ton of canned beans.
Yes.
And like some kind of like bean salad with like like literally if you have a half a bottle of salad dressing and 3 cans of beans, that's a delicious side dish or a main.
Totally. I have a recipe that I just transitioned into my spring queue of recipes, which is like that Italian grinder salad that was really popular, I think, last summer, except it has cannelloni beans in it.
Yeah.
And so, like, instead of like a lettuce salad, it's a bean salad. And that's a great one to use up stuff that's in your cupboards because it also uses, like banana peppers. And so it's like if you have these extra things, you could even put like black olives in there. Like, you could just like toss some extra things into it and make just this like, it's not a pasta salad, it's a bean salad instead. But you could also make pasta salad. Pasta salad's a great way to use up stuff in your cupboards too.
Yeah. Just this question of like how to not overspend on groceries. Like, I mean, we've covered it. I don't think that we need to add a ton more, but the thing that I just keep thinking is just knowing what's there.
Yep.
Immediately helps me because then I can meal plan around it and actually use it up and not buy it again. Like if I made this pasta salad, it's like, well, do I have the pasta at home? I don't know. I better just spend the extra $1.50 on the box of pasta. That's fine, but also you don't have to spend that $1.50 if you know you've got it at home. So just knowing what's there, putting eyes on it, going through it like spring cleaning kind of organization wise, like just go through it, see what's there, and then move everything you need to use to the front and just plan around it. It's a hugely helpful to save money on groceries that way. And I'm about to do it at my house. I gotta get rid of some stuff.
Yeah. I think you really hit the nail on the head is like having kind of an inventory, even if it's just kind of a running inventory in your head of like, you have these 5 essential things. But a lot of times what I do as well is I'll make a meal plan, even if I haven't looked at the things in my cupboard, and then I'll kind of go back and be like, do I have any substitutions in here? So like I don't need to buy all of the things that are for these recipes, but maybe I could substitute this type of pasta that we have instead of buying a different kind of noodle. Or I often swap out the meats in recipes. And so it's like, if this one calls for ground chicken, well, we have some ground turkey at my house. It's like basically the same thing. So
Yeah,
that's often how I get around buying extra things at the store.
that's a great idea. All right, next up in our dinner dilemmas. Sadly, this was someone who's put their name as trying and failing. Hopefully, we can do a good job of supporting you. So it said she has multiple chronic illnesses and disabilities. She plans and shops when she's having a good day, but it doesn't mean she'll be well enough to cook when it comes time to cook. And then she wants or needs vegetables to last longer than 2 weeks so that she can feel well enough to cook them. Otherwise, she's throwing a lot of things away. Her entry is several paragraphs long, so that's kind of the overview. What do you think we could do to help? She loves to cook. It's a matter of feeling well.
Yeah, and she mentions in here that they tried the meal kit subscription thing and that didn't work because of the need to still cook. This one is definitely a challenge. I don't have a personal experience with having a chronic illness or a disability, so I can't speak to this from my own personal experience. I do think that it was said in here that like everyone suggests that this person does batch cooking and that hasn't necessarily worked because their illness is unpredictable. But I do think that things that can be frozen is probably going to be the biggest help here. So like frozen vegetables instead of fresh vegetables. We were just talking about canned beans and stuff, utilizing these things that are the semi-homemade option of stuff so that cooking is very, like the time to cook is very low and the things that you're buying are more stable and they're not going to go bad immediately. Another thing that's immediately coming to mind is there are a lot of services nowadays where they'll send you like pre-cooked meals. I know this used to be a really popular thing for like bodybuilders who were concerned about their macros, and like their, I don't remember what the company was called, like Trifecta Systems or something like that. Anyways, and like literally like send you boxes of everything's pre-cooked and it meets a certain macronutrient profile or whatever. You might not care that much about the macronutrient profile, but there's potentially that for an option. I'm not sure how cost prohibitive it is to do something like that, but you could get these meals that are already made sent to your house, and then you could freeze the majority of them and pull them out, kind of like a frozen dinner situation, but it would be a lot healthier option than getting like the microwavable dinners at the grocery store.
Absolutely. I was looking really quickly on Instagram because someone I know is like partnered with a company like what you're talking about. Another company like that is called Factor Meals.
Yeah, I've
And it's
heard of that recently too. Yeah.
pre-portioned. You can freeze them or they can just be delivered like weekly or monthly. And because this person loves to cook, I hate to give that as a suggestion, but the food, it would come in handy for those times when they just can't do it. Even to just have them like, because the factory meals, you can freeze them. I don't think it's exactly recommended, but I've done it and it actually works great. And it just could be something that's like pre-made, pre-done, and pretty healthy. That because she says this is a big, like being nutritious is a high value for her
Yeah.
or for this person. And so something along those lines would be great. I know that batch cooking hasn't worked super well, but my mind immediately went to the woman who works for YNAB, Erin.
Yeah.
She, single, cooks for herself, but she does a lot of batch cooking and uses her freezer for it. So she's cooking, and when she has leftovers, she immediately freezes them pre-portioned. And that's a great option for the days when she's feeling really good, or sorry, this person is feeling really good. They cook something that they love and they make a double batch. And then that way everything they make maybe goes into the freezer so
Mhm.
that they get a lot of variety on the days when they're feeling poorly because they can just pull it out and thaw it out. And it's pre-cooked. It literally would just go from the freezer to thaw out to the microwave or stovetop or oven to be heated up. And that might work really well. And it's batch cooking, but it's also like a long tail, like
Yeah.
because they last in her freezer for months. I keep saying her. I apologize. I actually don't know who this person is. That might be a good option, just making larger batches of things when they do feel well, and then freezing them in portion-sized containers in the freezer, and then that would last them quite a bit longer.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. And yeah, hopefully there's not pushback from this person more about the batch cooking idea, but I do think that if wanting to have home cooked meals is really important, I feel like that's going to be the most consistent way to have a home cooked meal. And like you said, getting them pre-portioned into a single serving. So that way, if you do take it out of the freezer and then you're not feeling well enough to eat it, you're only tossing one serving of a
Yeah.
meal instead of like a whole pan of something.
Well, and you're not looking at thawing out like, chicken breasts or a pork loin, and then you're stuck with, well, I've got to cook it or it's trash. It's not like that. It's pre-cooked, but you cooked it. So it's got the nutritional value. And she
Yeah.
mentioned sodium, like it's got all those things she wants, but it's just portioned and it's pre-cooked.
Yeah. Potentially relying on appliances like the Instant Pot or just a slow cooker. So that way, maybe you could get things into their cooking mode. And then if you're not feeling very well, the things are cooked or they are actively cooking. And maybe then you're able to get them into the freezer like later in the day or something. But it wouldn't require active cooking time at that point in time, too.
Yeah. Another idea is potentially, she says or this person said they're planning and shopping when they have a good day. If the concern is like wasting less, it potentially is buying less or shopping for fewer days at a time. If you can get that freezer storage built up, then you could shop for fresher things like for a few days at a time or for less things, or totally to shift things around would be to just shop for things that are hardy, like
Mm.
apples. They last forever in the fridge. What are hardier vegetables? Potatoes are going to last for a long time. Sweet potatoes are going to last for a long time. A lot of winter squashes. And then that way, those things are fresh vegetables. but they're not going bad as fast. And so I'm not sure if what's going on with her is on a kind of a cyclical nature, if it's like every few days she'll feel better, then that way she could cook on the day she's feeling well, but things didn't go bad. And then for things that wilt or, go bad quickly, we look at the frozen options for that. So then we're looking at frozen berries to make smoothies and frozen broccoli that we can steam, and that kind of thing might work a little bit better. So just shifting the purchases to some things are frozen, some things are fresh.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you mentioned smoothies right there, which was an idea that I had was potentially keeping things on hand and probably in the freezer so that you could either make individual smoothie packs on a day when you're feeling well, or just having those items so that way you're getting, some fruits and vegetables in your diet. I think I would also like to mention that, if you're going through, multiple chronic illnesses and disabilities, try not to be hard on yourself when there are days that don't go the way that you wanted them to, particularly when it comes to the things that you're eating. Like it sounds like you're navigating a lot and it's really challenging. And so, ordering takeout or getting delivery, I would say just try not to be hard on yourself. Like you're doing the best that you can to take care of yourself. And it sounds like a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's showing yourself grace. That's a good thing.
Yeah. All right. Peg M writes in to say we have 2 upright freezers and small freezers in 2 refrigerators. Locating items is a never-ending problem. I started organizing by categories, but if a shelf for chicken is full, I wind up putting chicken somewhere else, and then I have trouble finding it.
I'm guilty of this problem too, so I'm grinning a little bit because I don't know if I have the best advice.
Tell us how you navigate it, if you have a way.
I mean, I feel like I am literally saying the same things over and over, but I look and see. I check every place that I could have put it. I don't have quite the extensive freezer selection and fridge selection that she has, so I have less places to check. But I will go check because occasionally I'll put something in my house refrigerator and then my freezer is about 100 yards away. And so I'll check in my house if I put it there, and I'll go check in the freezer about 100 yards away. But I just have to keep looking. And what I would say is like when that chicken shelf has space again, move all the chicken there. And it's an extra step, but it hopefully will lower that frustration so that she's not looking all over the place for these things, because once she's got space, once she's used up a bit of that chicken, then she can just move everything to that same place or use it up from all the other fridges first before she goes to the main chicken shelf for her chicken.
Yeah, I would recommend maybe having a tally, like a sheet of paper that you have a list of what's in a particular freezer and just like taping it on the outside of the freezer. So if you have one freezer that's majority beef products plus frozen recipes or something like that, like you could list some of those things out on the sheet of paper, and then and people in your household know which freezer to go to locate some of these items. And then if you happen to be like, oh, we don't have room in the chicken part for the chicken, you could write that, it's easy to just like write that in pencil or whatever on the other freezer to be like, don't forget you have 2 packages of chicken breasts in this freezer, because then it saves you from having to like dig through the freezer for those things. And you're just able to kind of like glance at your sheet of paper. I don't know if there's any way to do this. It's not clunky because freezer storage does get pretty overwhelming.
Well, another idea that's swirling around in my mind is using the staples list to list the amount of pounds that you have or something like that. But the hang up there is that if you're not the only person making adjustments to what's in the freezer, then it's not going to be updated adequately. And so finding the solution that works best for you, whether that's a digital list that is shared, everyone has a Plant-Eat app, or everyone has an iPhone and they have a shared iPhone note. And it says, Riley moved the chicken from fridge A to fridge B, something along like where you just can add a note that is that specific.
Yeah.
I liked what you said about having the list that lives on the fridge or freezer. My mind immediately says laminate it and then have a magnetic pen that's on the fridge where you can cross stuff off, but then you can erase it all because it's maybe something that you keep adequately stocked, or have a sticky pad that lives on the fridge with a magnet that you can put a note. Hey, there's no more chicken in here. We need more. However your family is keeping track of what you have, you're going to have to come up with some kind of organizational method that everyone can be on board with. And just knowing my own family, probably the laminated list that lives on that freezer that keeps stock of what's in here, they don't even have to open it. It just is listed and everyone is committed to, hey, I'm going to mark it off when I use it. Something along those lines might work pretty well.
I love that idea. That's genius. A whiteboard could potentially work as well if you're not keeping consistently the same items in each freezer. But yeah, those are great ideas.
My thought with a laminated list is just that it being typed out would be more legible than me writing it with a whiteboard. But something along those lines would work.
Yeah.
Okay. Next up from Trish from Philly. Hi, Trish from Philly. Accounting for leftovers, changes to the plan when my schedule changes, and how to make batch cooking easier.
Well, I have to say that accounting for leftovers can be tricky. If it's a new recipe that you've never made before, even if it says it makes 4 servings, or even if it says it makes 8 servings, a lot of the time, in my experience, recipes make more, which can be great for some households, and not so great for other households if you have people who don't really like leftovers, or maybe you're left with like an awkward amount of leftovers that's like not enough to feed everybody in the family.
My mind immediately goes to, when you say accounting for leftovers, is how do I keep track of the fact that I had leftovers?
Yeah.
The way that this works in my house is it depends on the amount of leftovers.
Yeah.
If the leftovers left over from a recipe are enormous, that was such an awkward sentence, but we're going to go with it. If there's a tremendous amount of leftovers, I'm going to immediately freeze half of it. Because I just know our family. I'm pretty much the only one who eats leftovers. I know I can't consume that much food, whatever. I'm going to freeze some of it, and I'm going to either portion it out for a single serving for myself to have for lunch the next day, or I will keep enough for me and my family to have as a full meal the next night, and we will eat the same meal 2 nights in a row with no shame. I'm like, everybody, I cooked this once, and we're eating it again, which goes great when everyone loved it.
Yeah.
It doesn't go so well when everyone did not love it.
Yeah.
Freezing it or freezing a portion of it is helpful. You can use the Plan to Eat freezer to keep track of what you have in your freezer. So that's a way to account for leftovers. But what I normally do is I either pack it for my own lunch the next day so that I know my lunch is covered, or maybe there's multiple people in your house who want to eat that for a different meal. So it depends on the quantity. If it's a lot, we'll have it for dinner the next night or the next night, like, 2 nights following, or I'll pack it for a lunch. And then that way I know, as the primary cook in my house, I know it's going to be consumed, and I know who's going to consume it and when, whether that's me or my whole family.
Yeah. I think a good thing here too is I know people who their refrigerator is like an abyss. Like that's not really how me and my husband work with our refrigerator, but we have people in our lives who their refrigerator is kind of an abyss. And so I think if that's your situation, you're having a hard time keeping track of the leftovers, plan a leftover night in your house where it's like, whatever the leftovers are, we're eating it. And I would just say do it like consistently once a week. So that way, by the time it happens, the leftovers for that week aren't bad. And hopefully you have enough little odds and ends to be able to like feed everybody. But you could definitely go through and, grab out all of the leftovers, see if there's enough food for everybody. And if there's not, like you make an extra side dish or something to go along with it. Or if it's all side dishes that are leftovers, you make a main protein or something. And that way you're trying to like clear stuff out every single week rather than the leftovers are building and building and building.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And then even that kind of speaks to the second question, which is changes to the plan when my schedule changes. If you have a big schedule change, maybe that's leftover night. Okay, hey guys, you know what? We've got a ton of food left over. I'm pulling it all out. We got a crazy night. It's a make your own, heat your own, eat your own, and we're going kind of night. And we do that at our house. There's sometimes the leftovers build to a point where it has to happen. Otherwise, everything's going to get thrown away. And I hate that. So, hey, you know what? I'm going to push off the meal I was going to make tonight, and we're going to have a leftover night instead. And just like you said, like sometimes someone ends up with a sandwich because all the other things got taken, everyone just had a little bite of everything. So we all had a sandwich in addition to the little bites of those side dishes. But I think that's a really good idea. And when changes to your plan and schedule happen, this is why I recommend planning a night that's easy
Yeah.
or not planning every night. And that way you've got space to say, okay, you know what? Thursday night got crazy. That's going to be our night we're going to get pizza, or that's the night we're going to go eat out, or that's the night we're going to have charcuterie and snacky dinner, just to bring it back around from earlier. And then whatever you had planned, you can move to a different night. And that way you're not throwing away all those ingredients or they're not going bad, but just giving yourself breathing room by not planning everything out every night. I never plan every night of the week because I know there's going to be something that comes up. But what I do is usually I have a meal that I can throw together from what I have at home. And it's something my family loves. It's like usually a pasta dish or like a taco soup, something that comes together really quickly with a lot of canned things or frozen ingredients. And that way, if we're home and we don't have leftovers and I don't have a plan, I can still make something. Yeah, that's one of the ways that I handle that. And so no one's going hungry. It's just that I don't plan every single night.
Yeah, that was the exact advice that I was going to give. So I really don't have anything to add other than, yeah, plan maybe a little less or just have 1 or 2 staples meals that you just keep on hand all the time.
How would you make batch cooking easier?
So I think for batch cooking, picking simple recipes is going to make it easier. Batch cooking could either be that you're batch prepping individual ingredients, right? Or it could be that you're batch cooking recipes. I'm going to focus on the recipes right now. So if you're batch cooking full recipes to then, eat as leftovers the rest of the week or to put in the freezer for later, I would say pick easy recipes that come together pretty quickly. That's going to keep the time down for your batch cooking. And if you're cooking multiple recipes, try to coordinate those recipes, the ingredients in those recipes, so that you're not chopping 1 onion for this recipe, but then you're chopping leeks for this other recipe, and then carrots, and right. So it's like you could just chop only onions or only carrots, and it's not all of this like back and forth switching between different things or using different utensils for stuff. That's what I got off the top of my head.
One of the ways that I make batch cooking easier is by doubling or tripling a recipe. So that way it does go into the freezer. Usually it goes into the freezer. Like usually I'm not planning on having the same recipe over and over again. I know I just said that we do that with leftovers, but that's usually what happens when I accidentally have a lot left over and I wasn't expecting it. But often if I'm intentionally making batch cooking, I will like make a double batch of a soup and half of it goes in the freezer. And that was the plan the whole time.
Yeah.
Another way that I make batch cooking easier for myself is that I do it while I'm already cooking.
Right.
So maybe something is simmering on the stove and I know the next night we're having like a Chipotle burger, but I've got to make the Chipotle sauce. So I'll be cooking whatever we're having for dinner that night. But while that's cooking or simmering or boiling, whatever it's got to do, I'm making the Chipotle sauce. I pack it up. I put it in the fridge for the next day. I know I've mentioned that I do this, like I'll make something for dinner at breakfast so that it's like some of that work is already done during nap time. That's helpful for me. Another way, Ronnie, you kind of touched on this, but like if we're going to have grilled chicken more than one night in a row, I may go ahead and grill all the chicken in one fell swoop. So, but I'll plan it that way. It's not an accident. It's not like oddly, it's not like, oh, we have cold chicken. It's like, well, tonight we're having grilled chicken with a lemon pasta. And tomorrow night we're having grilled chicken salads with fruit and veggies and all sorts of things on top. So they go together. I did the work, but it was prepped. It was intentionally going to be cold the next day. It's not like I'm like, I think sometimes batch cooking can get a bad rap because it's like, well, it's going to be gross by the time I go to eat it. Well, no, like this way is supposed to be cold, but it's a cold salad.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of things recently on social media about the like dump dinners, which I hate that phrase. It sounds gross to me. But so this could be a thing that you do for batch cooking is like you get out 5-gallon Ziploc bags, and you fill each one of them with the ingredients for this dump dinner recipe. And then you have 5 meals that are ready to go. All you do is you dump all the stuff into a crock pot and turn it on. And then your dinner is ready when you get home from work. And this definitely saves a lot of time in the batch cooking, because you're like, if you're measuring out a tablespoon of salt in each bag, you just do it every single one at the same time, rather than like, oh, I'm making this one recipe and then I'm making this one recipe and this one recipe. You just do it all. You create like an assembly line, essentially.
Yeah, that's a great idea too.
All right, moving on to Nikki. She says she has 2 7-year-old twin boys who are extremely picky eaters. She said her and her husband get a little frustrated because they like to try new exciting dishes, as well as her 12-year-old daughter, who will usually eat whatever she's served. She's looking for suggestions for taking grown-up meals and having a slight variation to part of the meal to make it kid-friendly. She would really appreciate some suggested recipes that are adaptable. She just feels completely burned out trying to make 2 meals every single night. And she's feeling some mom guilt about it.
This is a great question. I mean, I think it's complicated and you get mom guilt from every angle. So I get it. I get the mom guilt thing. But I would say do the best you can and then put the guilt away. So this sounds a lot like you're describing my household. My husband and I like to cook exciting, interesting, tasteful, flavorful, spicy dishes. And our kids will mostly eat everything they're served, but plenty of times I've made things that are way too spicy. And also kids just have a harder time eating some foods that adults can eat. I'm just even thinking like something as simple as a taco that is falling apart while you're eating it. A kid just doesn't have the like dexterity. My kids are younger than yours. So like the kids just don't have the dexterity to eat a taco that's also falling apart at the same time. And honestly, who enjoys that? Nobody. Okay, I digress. But what I will do often is I never make more than one meal, but I will make adjustments. So one time I made spaghetti that was too spicy. Like it was like a spicy marinara sauce. I added cottage cheese to it for my kids. So it like brought the heat down, added some protein for them, and they like cottage cheese. And so they actually liked that. I know that sounds really bizarre. If we're having something like let's say like some kind of like stack up, like rice and all sorts. I think I mentioned this on the last podcast, actually. It's got tons of ingredients, a spicy sauce on top. Like I won't serve my kids every ingredient. They have the option to try them, but they will get all the things that they like and will eat, and maybe a couple things I want them to try. So if we're having some kind of Asian rice stack up with like a pineapple and shrimp and a cabbage slaw, something like that, I'll let them build their own. It's like they like rice, they like shrimp, they like pineapple. Awesome. Let's see what else we can maybe get them to eat. Let's have some cilantro on it, something like that. Getting them where they can like choose their own, make their own, but like you're not making 2 different dinners. They're just building their own plate of it. So like maybe they don't have sauce that was really spicy, or they don't have maybe they hate mushrooms. They don't have to eat the mushrooms. They're cooked for everyone, but it's like a build your own kind of situation. I make these like buffalo chicken bites that me and my husband love, but the buffalo sauce can be a little spicy for the kids. So I make the chicken. It's basically like a chicken nugget, and my kids love them. I just don't put the buffalo sauce on them. So I try to plan meals that can have an adaptation, and maybe you would love some more recipes I can think on that. But I actually do it quite a bit where like I make one meal and then just make a slight adjustment so that it's not as spicy or it doesn't have the ingredient that they didn't like on it.
I'm actually thinking, so I have 2 thoughts related to this. And the first one is, Nikki asked for grown-up meals that could have a slight variation. And I'm almost wondering if you flip the idea a little bit and you think about like, what's kind of like a kid-focused meal that I could turn into a grown-up meal? So like, I'm thinking my husband and I eat like a buffalo chicken salad a lot, which is very similar to your idea of your buffalo chicken bites gave me this idea. And so it's like we take chicken tenders and we heat them up in the air fryer. And then like I make a buffalo chicken salad with like blue cheese and all sorts of stuff on it. And so it's like, maybe you start with like, what are the things that your kids will reliably eat? And how can you build that into a grown-up recipe so that everybody else who likes the more like exciting, flavorful meal can have that version of it. And your, more picky eater kids get their version of it too. My other thought related to this is I don't have children and I don't have twins, but we have some really good friends who have twins. And for our friends, there's one kid that's the more influential of the 2. And so I'm wondering if in your situation, if you have that with your twin boys, if you have the more influential one and the other one is just a picky eater because his brother is a picky eater. And so if that's the case, maybe you try like work on the influential one a little bit and trying to get him to try more foods and the other one will follow suit. I don't know. That's just a suggestion to throw out there.
I imagine wrangling 2 7-year-old boys can be a task in and of itself, depending on
Yes.
their personality. But even getting that, I mean, you said influential twin, so we're going to go with that. But like getting that twin in the kitchen to cook,
Ooh, great idea.
is getting them like, hey, you don't have to eat the broccoli, but you're going to chop the broccoli. I mean, I cannot reference the Katie Campbell podcast enough, but her thing with picky eaters is get them engaged with the food in some way and give it time. So
Yeah.
getting them in a super great way to do that. The build your own kind of meals is a great way to do it because they're saying, okay, I'm going to scoop this myself. I'm going to get as much as I want to eat of it. I'm going to look at that bowl of sauteed edamame and say, no, thanks. But I saw it. I thought it was an option. I thought about it. And maybe next time I'll try a bite. But if her advice with picky eaters is just, it's like getting reps in,
Yeah.
it's like literally in front of them over and over and over again. Maybe sometimes we have rules where we say, hey, we're going to try a bite today. Or I'm thinking like the other day I made broccoli for my kids and my kids have grown to like broccoli, but it was a slog. Like it took time. But I put Parmesan all over the top of the broccoli. And then suddenly it's like cheese broccoli. And like, oh my goodness, mom added Parmesan. Like maybe there's some things like that that you could do. Like maybe they love cheese. So we start with some kind of something that they don't like with cheese on it. Like, can we get there? Can we like change their mind about this certain thing? But getting the kids in the kitchen might also be a really good way to get them there. Just show them how it's made, have them be engaged with it. I don't know very many kids who will cook something and not be excited to try it at the end.
Yeah. That's a great tip. I love that you mentioned that.
Science experiment. Maybe your boys love science. Maybe, okay, today we're going to bake. Okay, let's start with something that's like, or maybe we're going to make something in the air fryer. Like, how does it even work? You could press all the buttons. Like, what kid doesn't love buttons? Those kinds of things like make it exciting for them.
I love it. All right. I think we got to wrap up this episode. Next week, we are back with another meal planning themed episode. And I guess in 2 weeks. And then we are starting our next book club breakdown in June. Riley and I made our book club pick last week and we posted it on Instagram. So if you want to know what our book club pick is, head over to our Instagram and check out the reel that we made. And if you want to read along with us, grab your own copy of the book. And other than that, thank you so much for listening. You can support the Pantry Podcast by sharing an episode or any episode with your friends, giving us a rating or review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. We really appreciate reading those and getting to know what you guys love about the podcast. So thanks again, and we'll talk to you in 2 weeks.